Cool. And then we will get started. Hold on one second. We will get started in one moment here. All right. My apologies. I thought I had that set up. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for the last day of the 4th Annual Earth Week Summit. This has been such a cool couple of days. We had some really good conversation on the collaborations that came with the International Climate Action Challenge. We got to listen to some really cool science panelists yesterday. And then today we have an awesome group of solution-oriented speakers that I'm really excited to get listening to. My name is Jen DeMeo. I am director of Green Team Academy, and we empower everyday people to be the change. We do this through a 90-day Passion to Action challenge, where we coach teams in launching their eco initiatives. Last year, we had 75 teams from 28 different countries, planted 150,000 trees, removed 48 tons of rubbish from waterways, held 200 community events, and so much more. And this is just bottom of the barrel of what we're able to do. So if you are interested in joining the 2022 International Climate Action Challenge, please head over to climateactionchallenge.net and sign up for the mailing list so that you don't miss when registration opens at the end of May. We also are looking for volunteers within Green Team Academy. So if you have social media experience, volunteer coordinating experience, or project management, please go fill out an application at greenteamacademy.org/volunteer. We would love to get you on the team. And we are also starting, we're launching an Eco Impact Jumpstarter session that will be taking place on May 4th of this year. And it is to help teams, it's to help teach people how to coordinate their own challenge. It's a program that we're going to be starting in the beginning of 2023, where we work with core groups of teams from organizations, businesses, educational facilities, any real like community-based organizations. And we teach them on how to coordinate their own 90-day challenge in order to build community while making a positive impact and having fun. So definitely go over to greenteamacademy.org to register for that Jumpstarter session to get an inside scoop of what the International Climate Action Challenge is, as well as what coordinating your own climate action challenge would look like. And then finally, I'd like to give a shout out to our partners. I hope that everybody picked up their World's Littlest Book on Climate when they registered for this event. It's an awesome little book, jam-packed with information on carbon in our atmosphere. Shout out to Trinity Forestry Tree Services, which is the group that allows us to, not allows us, but they are the ones who plant the tree for every $25 donation that goes to Green Team Academy. So it's a great collaboration with them. Team Great Golden, Glow and Gather, Colorado Environmental Film Festival, Elevation Global Solutions. Big shout out to Climate Action Homes podcast with Joan Gregerson. Joan's the founder of this organization, so none of us would be here today without her. So please go to support her podcast. And then also Climate Reality Project, which Celia isn't here yet, but so she would be introducing Climate Reality Project, but since she isn't here, we'll do that at the end. And we will jump into our first speaker, who is Kathy Sipple. I'm super excited to have Kathy here. She's like a master of a million crafts. She's time banker, sociocracy. She's super into permaculture. She lives by Paul Hawkins' Drawdown book and is here to talk today about eating imperfectly and how that can help us and our environment. So Kathy, take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Let me just start my, I didn't want to over talk you or start sharing the screen before I was supposed to, but are you seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great. Okay. Yeah, so eating imperfectly, I just think so many things about climate. Sometimes as environmentalists, we can look to how to do everything perfectly. And, you know, I don't want anybody to have analysis paralysis or try to figure out, do I need to eat organically? Do I need to be a vegan? Do I need to eat raw? You know, can I do fair trade only? All of those things are great. But when I started getting on this environmental path, it almost seemed a little bit like there was a little kind of too much shame in the food game. And I know that's a place of privilege, honestly, because some of us around the globe are just, you know, not even right here, you know, half an hour, 20 minutes from me, probably. There are people who are food insecure. So I guess this message is just to share with anybody who's looking for how to get started, since it's something that hopefully we get to do every day is eat. How can we eat in a way that helps the planet? And it might not look exactly the way you're used to. So if you happen to be somebody who likes QR codes, I did put a few of these on. And then I did also prepare, excuse me, a pretty robust resource link in the document that Jen's sharing with everybody who signs up for the conference. But you can find a lot of my links at linktree/Kathy Sipple as well. And that QR code will just get you right there too. So without further ado, just a little bit about me. Thanks, Jen, for that great intro. She already mentioned, you know, some of these, so I won't repeat, but I am also a Climate Reality Leader alum. So it's really nice to see them sponsoring this and see other speakers who also share that distinction. And then I've never gotten a master's degree, but I'm a lifelong learner. I was in the very first cohort here in Indiana when my state offered a master recycler, excuse me, and composter program. I'm also master urban farmer and a lot of other masters that are, you know, all environmentally tuned in. I'm an author, I'm a podcast host for an environmental local, and I could go on and on about all of these things. But if any of them are of interest to you, my contact info is at the end, and a lot of the info is in the links too. So the first way I wanted to start this out is actually kind of beginning with the end in mind. In 2014, that's when I joined that cohort of master recyclers and composters. And as an adult, I don't get a lot of opportunities to go on field trips, but one of our field trips was actually to a landfill. And this landfill is the place that receives all of the waste, all kinds of waste from, you know, my area. And I'm about an hour from Chicago. So they also get a lot of the Chicago land waste. And what I learned on that field trip is that some students from Purdue University here in Indiana had done an audit, a waste audit of what trucks were unloading into this landfill. And they found out that approximately 40% was food waste and paper, which just seemed astounding to me because, you know, I'm a composter and I know that those things can be composted. But once they're in the landfill, all they can do is really burn methane for like 7 years. Luckily, this landfill captures methane and they use it to power, you know, an egg carton company and this, that, and the other thing. So it's great when you're capturing, you know, the waste, but how could we divert this food and or paper from ever getting there to begin with? That's kind of what started me off on my Eating Imperfectly journey. So this little food recovery hierarchy graphic, this is something that I took from the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and landfill is at the very bottom. You know, that's the least preferred place that we'd like to see food, right? One step above that is composting. So, you know, that was kind of a natural place for me to begin. It was let me compost as much food waste as I can personally get my hands on. I try not to produce very much here in my household, But I, talked to local restaurants. I talked to neighbors and, said, hey, give me your food waste. I will compost it. So that's me at Earth Day, confusing some people with my little sign because it said promoting global warming. Not warming, I'm against global warming, but I do a lot of composting with worms, red wiggler worms in that Worm Factory 360. So that's one type of composting that I do. I also do outdoor composting. I do bokashi composting. I do all manner of composting. But so composting is great, but that's only the tip of the food waste iceberg. Another reason to compost is that there's this soil problem. I learned about this about 10, 11 years ago at first when I heard a speaker say that, we could be in danger of the world's soil actually running out, which just seems insane. If anybody knows Sadhguru, he's actually on a campaign right now, #SaveSoil, and he's getting this word out. This is 10 years after it appeared in Time magazine. So it's still a problem that hasn't gone away. Besides food waste reduction, composting is also necessary, or food composting is also necessary to put that organic matter back in the soil. And we can only get the nutrients out of soil if the nutrients are put in. And with commercial, chemical fertilizers, the soil is not getting nourished. So that's just one more reason to do the food waste composting. Drawdown, Jen mentioned in my intro, and I do love Paul Hawkins' Drawdown. If you're not familiar with it, you can get more information at drawdown.org. But to me, it's one of the most hopeful ways that people have presented solutions to climate change. And there are 80 plus. I think his desire was to chronicle 100 top climate solutions. And what I love leaning into is the ones that, again, we can do every day. Refrigerant management, that's not something I get to really weigh in on. That's the number one solution. Wind turbines, I don't have one. I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that. But number three, the most promising climate solution chronicled in Drawdown is reduce food waste. So that's something we can all potentially make an impact on. And although I said I wasn't going to, do blame and shame and everything like that, plant-rich diet, I'm not going to say you have to be vegan or you have to be vegetarian, but plant-rich diet, if we can just lean into eating more plants, and then, stacking functions is something that we say in permaculture, where you can do not just one solution, but actually stack those functions. That's what I'd really like to get excited about. So reducing food waste is number three, plant-rich diet is number four. And I couldn't figure out a way to bring up number 60 onto the screen grab, but number 60 is composting. So what would happen if, in our individual households, we would, lean into doing all of these things? This is something that we can easily do. And I'm hoping some teams might take on as part of their challenge in the fall. Let's see. Ooh, sorry about that. Okay. So then after I started really leaning into that intersectionality of composting, reducing food waste, and eating more plant-rich diet, the next question was, how do I do this sustainably? I kind of, like a lot of people, I guess, have been impacted by various, recessions and challenges, some of them from COVID, some of them from, the economy in the world. Sometimes I've just had to shrink my budget that I was able to spend on food. And there's a chain here that I will not disparage, but some people refer to it as whole paycheck, like trying to eat perfectly and, organically and everything, checking all the boxes. Sometimes it can take up like your whole paycheck. So I was looking for, how can I do this sustainably and also share it with other people who need to watch their budget? So plant-rich diet generally is going to be pretty affordable, much more so than eating, meat or other types of protein. But I estimate that I have saved tens of thousands of dollars over the past 5-6 years by employing some of the various strategies that I'm about to show you. So Imperfect Foods, I know we have a global audience here, and I'm sorry if some of these exact apps aren't available to you, with this specificity, but you might just Google something like this in your area and find out what's there. And in the resource links as well, I've submitted links that are a little bit more global in nature. I just can't give a personal shout out to say that I've used it or show what my impact has been, but just know that I am thinking a little bit more globally than just here in the US and specifically the Midwest where I am. But Imperfect Foods, this was kind of the thing that gave me, the idea to name my talk as I did. Imperfect Foods takes food from manufacturers that are slightly, misshapen or maybe bruised, or just they're too small, they're just not what most grocery stores, at least here in the US, want to display. They're not what consumers typically want. So sometimes they just get wasted at the grocery store. So Imperfect Foods, if you don't know, they box up those types of things and they make them available to people who can buy them online and have them shipped. During COVID, that was very convenient, especially when we were on lockdown and that kind of thing. If I can, I do always like to patronize my, local food producers. I also grow a fair percentage of food in my own yard. So this is kind of a supplementary thing that I do. But you can see the tally of over the however many years, 2 years that I've been shopping with them. It shows that I've, diverted 927 pounds of food. And it shows the gallons of water saved and then the pounds of CO2 saved by eating imperfectly. So I can't say that I can check their math and I exactly know their little way to figure that out, but it does stand to reason that if the food doesn't get eaten, it's not just the food that's wasted, it's all of the transportation miles that have gone into that, it's all of the fertilizers, it's all of the labor that's gone into making that food and having that available. So it's pretty tragic beyond just the food being wasted. There's a lot of other inefficiencies and waste. So Imperfect Foods I've been with for a while. Flash Food, oops, I forgot to take out my Imperfect Foods little banner. I don't have my correct banner up for that. But I've only been using this for about a month, and I can tell you I've saved $300+ just in the last month, and I can't remember what the corresponding amount of carbon. This is inflated. This is not correct for 1 month. But if you would like to try this, you can actually use the QR code, and you can save $5 on your first order. And the way this works is kind of like Imperfect, but it's in person. So all I do is just take out my phone. I can check daily if I want, or whenever I'm going to head to the grocery store, find out, what foods are about to be thrown away because they're at expiration. And I can prepay for them on my phone and then go to the store, pick them up. And it's tremendous savings, at least 50% off, often up to 70 or even 80%. So just quickly, a few other strategies. I could probably talk for like an hour about any one of these things, but other strategies that I love and that I've chronicled more thoughtfully in my handout is, foraging. I've already mentioned growing your own food. It doesn't get much more local than that. And when you've grown your own peach on your own peach tree, I just find that there's no way I'm going to let that drop to the ground and, waste it. Food swap is a great thing. We don't have time to go into right now, but you can either Google that or look on my resource link. Shopping at salvage groceries. I'm actually going to go to a salvage grocery a little bit after this. And this is an entire store that's devoted to receiving groceries that are of the imperfect nature. And diving, I put that one last. There is dumpster diving. I am not anti, but all of the things that I've done here have been done without dumpster diving. There's, one of my food salvage heroes is Rob Greenfield, and he lived for an entire year on food that he had salvaged from dumpster diving. There's an excellent movie called Dive that's very eye-opening about all the food that gets thrown away. So if you're somebody who doesn't need to save, or if you are, it doesn't matter. One way that I suggest we might pay it forward to help people who don't even have the luxury to think about, not wasting food. They're just trying to grow food or help them with food access. I like to take some of the savings that I make from saving on groceries and divert it to a micro lending site called kiva.org. And again, with the QR code, if you use this, you'll actually get $25 free that you can not donate technically, but make a micro loan to somebody who's doing a sustainable project all over the globe. It's really, really fun. Like I've made it my personal goal to, actually give a new loan to every single country that's listed. And I've done that just in the last month. So that's really fun. And then when that $25 loan gets paid off, you can reinvest it and reinvest it. So there are really cool solar projects, sustainable agriculture projects. And this is just a way that I can see that we can all do a little bit to be part of the global solution. So I know we've got a lot of other great speakers, and I want to be cognizant of the time. If you're interested in, having me talk further about this, email is usually the best way to reach me. I've got my email right on there, Kathy@kathysipple.com. You can go to my link tree, and that contains a bunch of different links to reach me. And then my phone number is on there. I'm not really great with picking up phone because I'm talking on Zoom calls so much, but please do email me if there's anything that I can help you with. Thanks for having me, Jen, and I look forward to hearing our next speakers.
Thank you so much, Kathy. That was incredible. And I did drop some of the links in the chat as you were going along. So hopefully take a look at some of those, and we can keep throwing stuff in the chat as well, because you have a whole sheet of beautiful resources that I appreciate, and I'm really excited to share with everybody. Cool. So thank you so much, Kathy. And we will move on to our next speaker, who is Inak Mangwila. I had the honor of meeting Inak on my recent trip to Zambia. And he works at the National Office. He is the National Office Projects Manager for the Wildlife and Environment Conservation Society of Zambia, and super passionate and knowledgeable in educating youth on environmental tactics. So he's going to be talking about transforming attitudes and behaviors for climate action, preparing the future generations. Thank you, Inak.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Perfect. Yes, so I'll go ahead and just share my screen. Yeah. You can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah,
okay.
looks good.
Perfect. So my name is Enoch Mwangilo, but then to kickstart what I want to share today, I just had a few questions running through my mind when I was asked to speak today. And I think this statement can be somewhat radical, and it goes as follows. Unless one chooses to remain irresponsible with enough awareness, knowledge, the right attitude, adequate skills, and a platform to participate in climate action, they will join the fight against climate change. But again, what then can result in the attainment of all those things that I've underlined up there? One would even ask to say, are there success stories we can look to at, these are real situations or stories of people whose attitudes, whose knowledge has been developed, and now they respond differently to the climate crisis. Who really should be, dealing with these aspects of, getting people to act responsibly in the fight against climate change. And so that's what prompted me to put up together this presentation, which I titled, of course, Transforming Attitudes and Behaviors for Climate Action. And because we work so much with youth and also the elderly, but this particular presentation tries to put across a case study of, a success story or an experience from one of our youth programs. Yeah, so that's the title of my presentation and my focus. My name is, as Jean introduced me, I work for the Wildlife and Environmental Conservation Society of Zambia, yes, in Southern Africa, yes. So really the concept I want to share with you is that of education. And Nelson Mandela said the following, one of our great African leaders, world leaders, we believe, said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Okay, is that true, Nelson Mandela? One would ask. Okay, another very great mind spoke to something similar, and this was the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in his time in 2013, when he was actually launching this Millennium Development Goals. Then he stated the following: people today often ask me about my country's transformation from poverty to prosperity. Without hesitation, I answer that education was the key. Again, we ask, Secretary General, is that still true? Is education still the key to transforming people, moving them from poverty to prosperity? And I think it cannot be argued that education hasn't got that much impact on people and in terms of society, transforming society. This also has been stated by so many people, and one of the major institutions that promote education, especially that which is targeted at young people or children, is UNESCO. And they have put together this concept now they are calling Education for Sustainable Development. And they argue that ESD, or Education for Sustainable Development, empowers learners of all ages with knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes to address the interconnected global challenges we are facing. That includes issues of climate change, issues of environmental degradation, issues of biodiversity loss, and also issues of inequality and poverty. This really is what I wish to speak to. And I think I'll speak to them in a sense of looking at how one can go through these stages and end up as somebody who's passionate about climate action. Yeah, so really, what is our story, which we want to share with you, since I said I'll share an experience. Sometime back in 2009, a group of children went to Denmark for a very important, summit. There were the 4 of them from Zambia, some of them whose faces you'll see as we go on. And when they came back, they started what is called Unite for Climate, and that was in Zambia. This is a global initiative, actually, but now they push that agenda to be started in Zambia. And in 2009, there was the first, Zambia Climate Change Children's Conference. Okay, it was called the ZCCC. At this conference, young people were asked to apply to come and attend a conference that talks about climate change and many other issues to do with the environment, and a bit more of some cross-cutting issues that affect young people and children. And so a group of 250 gathered, and they went through a process of learning about what they experienced, the 4 children who went to Denmark had, and what young people and children can do in Zambia. So that continued, those conferences where young people were coming from across Zambia to meet in one place and learn about climate change and how they can be advocates for the environment or conservation or do climate change advocacy, continued for about 8 times of such big conferences, having at least 150 children gathering to learn for at least 5 days. And this program has continued with support from UNICEF Zambia since 2010. And really, the implementing partner has been the Wildlife and Environmental Conservation Society of Zambia, the institution I work for. This institution has got education for sustainable development, or environmental education, as the backbone of how we operate at the society. And so we strongly believe in the power or the approach that environmental education takes in terms of transforming behavior, empowering young people with skills and values so that they begin to respond appropriately to the climate crisis. And so I want to take you through environmental education, or the principles of environmental education, or the same principles that are applied in education for sustainable development. The first is that of just making sure that the people you have in a particular area get to have an understanding of what's around them, what is in your environment, what kind of trees are found there, what types of soils are found in your area, what animals are found in your area. Then it moves to the stage where it seeks to help people understand a bit more about those things that are in the area. So the association with the environmental problems in the area comes in, okay? And the critical need for human beings living in that particular environment to learn more about how they can help that environment thrive. Environmental education or education for sustainable development doesn't end there, because when one is aware and they have a better understanding, the next thing you may need them to have is skills for them to then start doing something about the things they've learned in that particular environment. It also goes further to then start shaping. If you look at the 3 stages, then with enough awareness, with enough knowledge and some skills, as you try to practice some things, your attitude towards that particular issue that's in your environment begins to change. And this is how come people's attitudes begin to change. But most importantly, when you're trying to do education for sustainable development or environmental education, you try by all means to create platforms for people to then utilize the skills that they will have learned over time. And last but not the least, there's the aspect of evaluating how you are progressing through this stage. And of course, you can check out this from the site, from UNESCO's official website. So how do we then do this in our Unite for Climate and Conservation program? We go through a cycle of a few things that I've highlighted. So we try to recruit children from schools around and then put together also a team of teachers who become chaperones for the young people. So these young people and the chaperones, together with older younger people, are brought together and they go through a training. When we train them to become what we call climate change ambassadors. And these climate change ambassadors get to have a point for them to sit, develop an action plan, which they then implement. Sometimes with some financial support, sometimes on their own, and most especially that aspect where individually they need to start acting as individuals. And what you see then from these action plans is that sometimes and often these climate change ambassadors have developed projects that have to do with climate change mitigation and adaptation. Well, yes, I believe this looks like a lot of theory. Looks like a lot of theory. And so I wanted to share this story then with respect to how we really can attend this in practice. And so I wanted to take us through just quickly how we human beings learn really. And what you notice is that we learn through how we feel, And then this begins, if you look at education for sustainable development, with their awareness side of things, and also the building of knowledge. People begin to feel somehow about some things. With the thinking aspect, I talked about how we try to put these young people together to let them develop action plans. In that moment, you're allowing them to think on their own of the solutions they can develop for their own areas. One thing that we incorporate in our training is that of making sure that we take these young people during the training on tours for them to go and observe some of the critical, climate change actions that are taking place within their communities. But most importantly, the implementation of projects where young people get to do things other than just feeling, thinking, watching, and listening to learn, but they get to learn, for example, how to plant a tree. So how do we do this then in practice? I'm quite visual, and we are quite visual where we are just so we can show how we then translate all that theory I've talked about into practice. What you see on the far left is one of the ZCCC conferences where young people come together through and we train them. The other picture you see there is that of young people in a greenhouse, looking at tomatoes being grown, This is showing them, exposing them to then some knowledge on smart climate agriculture. The other picture you see there is young people being exposed to a skill, being taught a skill on tree planting, particularly pot filling. So filling in the polythene bags for them to, put seeds in there and start a whole nursery. The other picture you see there is helping these young people to think, prompting them to think a bit more by asking them to do, an action plan. And finally, you see skills being implemented. The picture on the top, on the bottom right, was an initiative where we planted over 1,500 trees with a new technology that the young people then had to pilot called the cocoon technology developed by Land Life Company, something I would recommend that you check out. So these are the stages that we take the young people through practically in our program. The same continues, the knowledge of them practicing how to put up, a conservation garden through practicing minimum tillage and issues like mulching in their areas. The other pictures you see here at the bottom there, you see two young people and the other standing at a school. These are climate change ambassadors then doing peer-to-peer awareness raising to their fellow youth. And this makes so much sense. If you see there's so much dancing, utilizing that energy by translating, putting them in a session where they will have fun, but most importantly, learn so much about climate change, the sustainable development goals, and all that. With regards to providing platforms, the picture at the bottom right shows young people ambassadors at, this was at the Child Rights Conference when it was 30 years of having the Child's Right Convention. So that platform, the ambassadors had an opportunity to do advocacy at a high level. We had, government ministers joining in and sharing just how much young people should be present when climate change issues are being addressed. So this is how we do things in practice under the Unite for Climate and Conservation program. What we have seen is a transformation of these young people when they undergo this process of educating them. So what have we achieved really in terms of some of the statistics from this initiative that we have? We have trained over, since 2010, like I mentioned, we have trained over 1,600 climate change ambassadors across Zambia. We have planted over 30,000 trees. And in fact, I must say growing over 30,000 trees in over 200 schools across Zambia. We have the young people experience doing advocacy that led to building a climate adaptive infrastructure where in a community or rural area where there is flooding, young people advocated for the building of what we call a floating school. But this is just a school which young people can still access even when there are floods. You can find that young people can still go to school through using a boat that takes them to a school that is elevated above ground so that it doesn't get flooded. We have done a number of projects, over 10 projects implemented. We do a lot of peer-to-peer education facilitated by these young people. And most recently, we started doing the world's largest lesson. That is just raising awareness about the sustainable development goals. We believe that without people knowing about what the sustainable development goals, even questioning their attainment will be difficult. Yes. So just in 2 years, we've managed to reach out to at least 1,200 pupils in 24 schools within Zambia. So these are some of the achievements that we have, attained under this program. And this is being done by young people whose attitudes, whose behavior has been transformed. When you listen to them tell you about how they think about just disposing of a piece of plastic from them eating some food from the market, you would be amazed. You would know, you would learn that something has changed about them. And so here are the examples. I mentioned that I love visuals. What you see here are pictures of young people who've gone through the process of being climate change ambassadors. The first one you see is Mulemba Mulando. She's a law student, but very passionate. Should she hear about a cleanup campaign, she will leave school to come and do that cleanup for a few hours and then leave to go back. Another amazing young person who's been an ambassador before is Brighton Kaoma, now the global director for the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Once a climate change ambassador, is now making impact at the international stage. Another one is Cheswa Mpanda Mavula, now managing, an officer managing a project dealing with climate change at Action Aid Zambia. He's an ecologist. When he tells you his story, he will tell you that his passion to get into the conservation sector started through being an ambassador. Another one you see is Luyando Patenda, who's now a graduate and works at Afro Barometer out of the country as well, passionate about conservation issues. There's many more. We have Beatrice Spiri, who's now a founder of Friends of Nature, and she is a National Geographic Youth Explorer. We have Thompson, who's the founder in his own university, where he started an association called Rethinking Economics Zambia Network. In that network, though he is an economy student, they're talking about how they can push in environmental conservation issues there. We have Christina Malake, an environmental education officer, amazing with raising awareness amongst young people, breaking down climate change science in ways that can be understood by young people. Chisoni Banda, another youth facilitator in the program, award winner for environmental protection at an individual level. We have a youth facilitator, Maggie Cheso, and Dozile Mwinga, also another student who ventured into the conservation sector because of having been an ambassador. Now he studied environmental studies and geography, and is a graduate in that sector. There's many more. John Kachakwale, who's a communication student, good at communicating climate change issues and utilizing the skills that he's also gained now from his profession into how we can best communicate climate change. The two in the middle are Martin and Monde. These are some of the most recently trained ambassadors, and this is an activity we recently did for the world's largest lesson, where they were talking about sustainable development goals. You can see SDG 15 there on the t-shirt. Gift Musabula just went to university now. He's studying environmental engineering. And you ask him why he's made that decision. It's because of this experience that they had through this program. What am I saying? We're saying that education has the ability to transform characters, and it can build powerful attitudes that will help people transition from being, spectators of the climate change fight into people who can act on, in their own way in response to the climate crisis. I love this quotation from Al-Shabi. He says, education polishes our mind. It reinforces our thoughts and strengthens our character and behaviors towards others. And lastly, to conclude, I would say, for us to move from the climate crisis to climate success, quality education, and I mean education that's properly delivered, is very, very key. It will transform attitudes, behaviors, and inspire the much needed widespread urgent climate action. So I hope you now believe in taking some time to talk to someone about what the climate change problem is and a few things that they can act on. And consistently doing so will help them transform their behavior and attitudes towards issues of the environment and climate change. We can get in touch. That is my email there. And that's my LinkedIn. The other links to access the Wildlife and Environmental Conservation Society of Zambia and also the Unite for Climate and Conservation program, I believe, have been dropped in the chat box. So thank you very much for being here.
Oh, great job for presentation. It's like really, really interesting and it's very much informative and inspirational. Thank you very much. So just for giving a brief introduction about myself, you have seen me in previous session as a speaker, and now I'm here as a moderator because we are partnering with Green Team Academy. Thank you very much, Jim and Green Team Academy for this collaboration. And finally, we are like packing up with our sessions of 3 days of Earth Week Summit. So it's great pleasure to be a speaker and to be serve as a moderator for this event. And a big thanks to all of the speakers for being participating and sharing their ideas, their activities. Like shared his plan and his activities. These are like quite inspiring and much like inspirational for the youth and for the participants. Must be for the participants as well. So the takeaways for me from presentations are like very, very important. Like, the first point is the education, and second is the focus, the leadership. So because we have programs running on all over the world, projects, we have so many NGOs, we have so many companies which are focusing about the climate reality, climate change, climate effects, environmental effects, go green. Like in the day two, we have a speaker with the concept of green learners. We have Green Academy, obviously, we have climate reality, and we have climate change. We have so many projects running on which are actually focusing on the leader, on the youth, to make as a leader. So a strong leader can generate can generate a big change in the world, can generate new ideas and innovations, the scientific techniques, the terminologies. So the best point is to focus the youth. So I'm just I would like to invite Jim from Green Teen Academy to present his portion, and he will be focusing on a very hot topic, which is the power of committing to 90 days challenge. So Jim, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Celia. All right. Okay. Can you see my screen all right? Okay. So I kind of went a different way than I was anticipating with this talk. But I think that before we talk about the power of committing, it's important to understand what keeps humans from committing to things. And this wouldn't really be a good science and solutions themed summit if we didn't try to understand the science of becoming the solution. So first, what qualifies me to speak on this topic? I don't have any degrees in this field, but I did rather impressively teach myself how to juggle, ride a unicycle, and then do both together within 2 weeks. And it's interesting because I was never one to take on extra activities, and particularly not ones that made me work too hard. And if I did, I would never follow through. Then out of nowhere, in 2019, I started a YouTube channel to showcase these challenges that I had just started setting out for myself, all because of one win that I had. And actually, my first video in April of 2019 was titled Goal Achieving for the Not So Goal Oriented, because it was a very new thing for me. But that was my launch into a quest of figuring out what holds people back from becoming motivated. And there are so many different ways that I could have gone with this talk, because it's definitely more complex than just this one aspect. But for this, we'll just do like basic biology, neurology type stuff. So let's start by looking at some common reasons that people don't start something. Fear and anxiety is a huge one. But while being in a state of fear, we're actually operating from our sympathetic nervous system, also known as the fight or flight response. And fear is definitely something that has kept our ancestors safe, which has been necessary for our evolution. But when you look at society in our current days, we operate from that same sympathetic response system pretty regularly. And what I mean by that is that, excuse me, I'm sorry. Societally, we operate in this fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, as opposed to living in a parasympathetic state of rest and digest mode when our body is operating more efficiently. So what does this have to do with the inability to commit? It actually has quite a bit to do with it, because it's kind of a validation that not taking the first step may biologically, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh, hold on, guys. I don't know what's happening right now. There we go. Sorry about that. Oh my gosh, that whole. Give me 1 second, guys. I lost my presentation. Wow. Well, talk about a technical difficulty. I apologize for that, but here we go. Okay, so what does us operating from that fight or flight mode really do with us not being able to commit? So biologically, it may not be anybody's fault that we have trouble taking the first steps on doing something. And that is because when our body is in fight or flight state, energy is reallocated to responses like increased heart rate, heavy breathing, decreased metabolism, sweating, and so on, which doesn't leave much to spare for taking on new tasks that will also be consuming energy. This sympathetic nervous response is also why people tend to flee or freeze when it comes to taking on huge issues like climate change. So another thing that keeps people from committing is complacency, which is an attitude or behavior that is characterized by content in one's own ability or situation, which inhibits attempts or desires to change or try harder. But what's cool about this is that becoming complacent is also built into our human design, and it's something that we can overcome if we want to. Our brains can process 11 million bits of information per second, but because it's a master energy conserver, we actually only process about 40 to 60 bits of information per second. So although complacency may have a bad rep, it's actually an innate characteristic within all of us. And unless we're aware that we're running a pre-programmed cycle that was specifically designed to conserve energy, there's nothing that we'll do to change it. And the key phrase to that is a cycle designed to conserve energy. So this explains why we become so attached to things staying the same. It isn't necessarily because we don't want to change, but our brains literally just don't want us to work too hard. So how can we overcome these dispositions? One is awareness. If you're not going to know if you don't know, right? So hopefully this presentation kind of brought light to some of the biological holdbacks of getting started. Next would be practice. Just like any muscle in our body, overcoming any sort of habit or complacency is going to come with work, but luckily it will get easier with time. And then third, finding something worth committing to. It's hard enough to complete things that you do want to do. So don't try and start by committing to something that you're not full in on, because it's literally setting yourself up for failure, which is a topic for a whole nother presentation. But really, there isn't any workaround for this. We can only work through these biological dispositions. So I'm going to shift gears here and kind of go out on a limb and say that we're all here because we love and respect this beautiful planet. We want to help the environment in one way or another, whether that's through social justice, policy work, environmentalism, education, medical equity, like pick your cause, they're all connected to the overall well-being of our environment. So if I were to give you a surefire way to make change within 90 days, but you would need to promise to commit 3 to 5 hours to doing assignments, attending meetings, coordinating people, events, all of that stuff, would you do it? Most people would like to say yes to this, but few would probably follow through. And I would probably know because I just so happen to run an organization that has a challenge with this exact structure. But as we've learned, we aren't exactly biologically or neurologically wired to start or follow through on something like that, which leads me to a differentiating question that helps me to overcome the mental hang-up of just getting started on something. And that is simply, am I interested or am I committed? And then understanding the difference between the two. So if we're interested in something, we'll do what's convenient to make it happen. But if we're committed to something, we'll do whatever it takes, including taking the first step to bulldoze through these biological barriers that we just talked about. And figuring out what is truly worth committing to is the first step in taking action and seeing something through. So I'll leave you with this. I know there are a lot of heavy issues in the world right now, but don't fall victim to the idea that any one person needs to take them all on. There are people here who dedicate their lives to different causes so that others only have to take the first step of committing. So, are you feeling committed to making an impact? If so, go to climateactionchallenge.net to join the mailing list and be notified for when we open the registration for our 2022 International Climate Action Challenge, where we'll help coach your team through making the impact that you were meant to create. Last year, we helped coach 75 teams from 28 different countries. They planted 150,000 trees, started 130 gardens, 3 urban gardens, removed 48 tons of rubbish from waterways, held 200 community events, and a bunch more. And it all started with a simple commitment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's incredible. Thank you very much for sharing the information and the ideas. Definitely, Brain Academy is a big platform, and we have so many, like I always used to say that we have so many projects going on. We just need an initiative to run the program. We just need a platform. We need the innovative ideas. We need the innovative minds to set up the technologies to run the programs, the drives. So all we need is the education firstly, but from the presentation of we need young leaders, we need the youth to to give them the idea that like we need to proceed with the climate change or the environmental activities. We actually need to focus on the earth because this is what we need to serve. So wrapping up my portion, I just want to say, like, we have so many programs. Just be an activist, be a person who actually wants to make the change in the world. Be someone who have innovative ideas. No doubt, if you are a single person, a single man can bring up a lot of changes in the world in a positive way. So don't worry if you think that I'm a single person. We have so many organizations that are really supportive to the ideas, and they actually need the innovation to run their programs and to run their drives. So actually make the change in the world, who actually committed to make the change in the world. Be an activist, be a social worker, try to join the volunteer activities, try to join the volunteer platforms to for your self-development and also to serve the world. So that's all from my side. And finally, we're wrapping up our Earthquake Summit with the great success and a bunch of knowledges, a bunch of experiences, and a bunch of like information from different parts of the world, definitely. So thank you very much. That's all from my side.
So I'm just gonna add us all here so we can kind of just do a little group chat. Yeah, this was awesome. There were so many great topics discussed. Doesn't look like, do we have any audience questions? If not, is there a topic that any of you guys would like to just start riffing on? I think there was a bunch of cool stuff that we could kind of pick from. I'm up for education, composting, time banking. Actually, have you guys heard of time banking? I know Kathy has, and it's like kind of a huge connection point between us. But I think that might be kind of cool to speak on if, oh, yes, all those topics. Thank you, Katrina. Kathy, actually, would you kind of want to give a rundown of what time banking is? Because I think that's such a beautiful, like all-encompassing kind of solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, like I said, I could probably talk for an hour on any one of these topics. So I try to just do real broad brush to throw a lot of ideas out there of how we might accomplish this. Jen, you spoke to some of the reasons that we don't move forward and we don't set goals, but I find that time banking helps take away some of the financial reasons that we don't move forward with environmental projects, because it basically is a way to unleash the abundance that's already present in community, but people just don't know about it. So basically, when people hear about it, sometimes, well, I'll try to explain what it is, and then I'll tell you what people get mixed up and think it is. It's basically where neighbors or anybody in the time bank help one another, and instead of being paid, they receive time credit. So 1 hour equals 1 hour equals 1 hour. So regardless of if you are an engineer or an attorney, or you have some, traditionally higher paying jobs out in the regular economy, if you spend an hour doing something for someone, you would get 1 hour. If you were an 8-year-old child and you make zero or very little in the traditional economy, you would earn the same amount that that other person would. So what happens is when you're helping a member and you get time credit, some people think, oh, that sounds like bartering. But with bartering, you basically are kind of doing the math in your head to figure out, is it worth it for me to help this person? And you have to go find that person and then get a match. But in the time bank, one member can help any other member, and you don't have to do it for a full hour either. You can do it in an incremental, portion of an hour, which is pretty cool. And some people think, oh, I'm doing work and I'm not being paid in money. That's just like volunteering. I do that already. But as a volunteer, I tell organizations, especially if organizations aren't in this, or people already are happy to help an organization and receive no money, if they could get the organization to be a member of the time bank, then they could still keep helping the organization and bank that hour, so that if the organization needed to get additional help that they don't have within their traditional, volunteer base, then they could take that hour and say, hey, we need a website developer, or we need, fill in the blank. So I'm pretty excited about it. Obviously, I think that comes through. It's not inherently environmental, but because I was the time bank founder and coordinator here where I live, I tended to attract people and recruit people who were interested in environmental and climate. So I'll just give one example. There was one young woman who joined the time bank during her gap year between high school and college. She was not ready for college yet. And so she joined the time bank. She was my shadow for about a year. She racked up all kinds of hours. And she was actually, she joined me in the climate reality leadership training that we both traveled to back in 2019. And because she had racked up so many hours, when she wanted to do a climate summit, she didn't have a lot of contacts in the community yet because she was 19. She was, pretty young, but she could take her 100 hours. And with that, she was able to get a public artist to an art display related to climate. She was able to get a musician who was willing to play the guitar at this event. She was able to get people who brought food. She was able to get people to, work the registration desk and clean up and all kinds of things. So even things that don't seem inherently related to climate at an event, anybody can pitch in. So it's just a great way to map, resources within community, get stuff done. And hopefully the people who hear about this will use it to get, climate work done. So anyway, I can definitely go deeper if any is needed, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that concept so much. I think it kind of prioritizes time over money, which is really what we need societally right now. I think we need to really just appreciate what we have to give opposed to what we want to get. And that's a really cool way to go about it. So thank you for that introduction to time banking and everything. There was what challenges do you face with the food programs? I'm not all too sure.
Oh, was it the food
The grocery,
products?
the grocery. Yeah, I'm not all too clear. Maybe that will make more sense to you in the chat.
maybe I see a question that says, what are those challenges you face during the food products program? I'm wondering if they mean, are there problems with the food products themselves? I'm not sure if that's what is meant, but I'll just kind of address that, because sometimes people are like, oh, I want my family, to be safe. I want them to be healthy. I don't want to serve food to them that, I know, like with dumpster diving, I got to say, I'm a little concerned about that,
Yeah.
what contaminants have they been exposed to, or this kind of thing. But all of the things that I outlined in my presentation are actually very, very safe. Here in the US, at least with our Food and Drug Administration, they've got, food best by labels, expiration dates. If things are frozen at or before expiration date, you can extend the life, of that food by a very long time. So freezer is your friend. If you can, get that food and then put it in your freezer, you can buy another month, couple months, things like that. But often there's hardly anything wrong with the food. Sometimes it's, like one can in a whole pallet was dented or crushed or something like that. Well, typically that whole pallet will come off of the truck and will end up, as salvage grocery or scratch and dent kind of thing. Or sometimes, grocery stores will change their labeling, and there's absolutely nothing wrong at all, but they've just rebranded, or, companies have merged, and then all of a sudden they don't want, these items that have the old label showing up on the shelves, and they'll just take them and send them off to like a salvage grocery. I'm actually going to the salvage grocery later today, and I'm going to pick up a friend in the time bank on the way. So we're going to carpool that whole thing. But, honestly, there's all kinds of stuff here that sometimes it just doesn't go well in the market that it was placed in. If it's kind of a new product and people just didn't get it, they didn't like it. Seasonal items, there's some stores here that, have, you can buy clothing more cheaply if it's winter clothing and it's now 80 or 90 degrees out, because they know they can't sell it. So if there's something that had a Christmas theme or some other theme and now it's past that holiday, it goes for pennies on the dollar. So I hope that helps.
I'm pretty sure they said yes. So I think you nailed that. I think that also a lot of, like, in America, we have a thing about aesthetics, right? Like if foods don't, like fruits and vegetables, if they don't meet specific presentation qualities, they get thrown in like a rubbish pile, which is where Imperfect Foods, like, they take those as well, like those veggies that don't meet the criteria, which is awesome, because that's a really weird way to judge food, but here we are.
Can I piggyback on that real quick?
Please.
And another thing I learned is beyond the aesthetics of the food, like there's an organization that I listed in my notes called St. Andrew's Society, and they work with something called gleaning. So they'll go into a farm field and they will glean or get the remaining, produce that's left after a commercial harvester goes through. And I went one time to a cucumber field, and a pickle manufacturer had contracted with this farmer to get just certain kinds of pickles. And even not the aesthetics, but it needs to be a cucumber that goes through their machinery to like slice that cucumber in a certain way. So it can only be a certain circumference. If it's bigger than that, smaller than that, it's just not going to work well with their machinery, and it would be left in the field. So they need people to volunteer and come out and hand harvest, and then they'll send that food either to a salvage grocery, to a food bank, or some other kind of food processor that's not so, large scale. So there are many, many different reasons. I just encourage people to get curious about what happens to food in your community, and be like a little detective, be a food detective, and just, find out, well, how can I play a part in some way in the food diversion? The apps are just really a jumping off point. And one thing I forgot to say too, that I meant to, is you're the only audience that I've shared these links with so far. So if I see people that are taking advantage of those links, because I have some tracking in the background, I will make a donation to Green Team Academy for, I don't know exactly what the math will work out to be, but I will know that it's from you, and I will make that donation to Green Team Academy rather than Kiva for this month, because I really support, everything that Jen and Green Team is doing. So anyway, enough for me.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, everybody, please, if those programs are accessible where you are, most definitely use them, because that's like you mentioned in the drawdown, like there's so much about food waste. And even like when it comes to people being hungry, we probably have more than enough food, but just so much of it gets wasted. And that's huge emitter of methane, which is even more potent than carbon. And it's detrimental in so many different ways, on like a human level as well as an environmental level. So doing what we can to avert that is really, it's probably one of the simplest steps to take to make an impact. And there are so many different projects that you can bring. If you have an idea, come join the Climate Action Challenge and start composting in your area. I know Denver actually has a thing going on right now where they're pushing this initiative through where they have free compost and recycling pickup, and you have to charge for your trash pickup. So it's kind of like prioritizing money, right? Like you're gonna want to do less trash, and that's brilliant because that free compost pickup is going to be huge, you know. So it's awesome. See cities around the world starting to implement things like this, and it's really reassuring that we're on the right path. But it all really starts at an individual level. We all need to be starting to take accountability of what we produce, and what we can do with what we produce. So generally speaking, the worst food waste in agriculture happens in the post-harvesting phase. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, so, I'm gonna try and get a knockback on here.
Hi, Jane. My apologies.
No problem. I don't know how to get you back on the panel though. But I think if we don't have any more questions, unless somebody has another topic that they want to throw out and discuss, we might wrap it up a little bit early, if you guys are all okay with that.
You know, can I, if other panelists don't have something to say, can I just riff a little bit further on some of those other?
Yeah, most
Okay.
definitely.
As I mentioned real quick, food swaps, and then I didn't really say what that was, but I also included that in my notes. But the food swap network, it's just a website that offers, you know, listing a directory of a local food swap that you want to initiate. And what I found is if you're somebody who goes after these, you know, food waste reduction strategies, sometimes you end up with like a bushel of something and you're like, well, okay, great. Now I've got like a bushel of these weird cucumbers. Like, what do I do with it? So, you know, food preservation and then food sharing can become your real friend. And if you don't want to, you know, be eating cucumbers every day for like the next few months, food swap is a great way to kind of bring people together to share food that is either homegrown, foraged, or homemade. So that is really, really fun. Since COVID, admittedly, our food swap has really come to a little bit of a slowdown, but I hope we can get that started again very soon. It's a great way to get to know, you know, other people who care about food, and you can learn about food and share these kinds of tips with one another. And then also, you know, I didn't mention sociocracy, and Jen, you mentioned that in my intro, and I would love to see somebody grab onto one or more of these ideas and kind of stack them together, because I think that they would work so awesomely if we could get, you know, youth involved in time banking. I put in ytbrn.org, which is Youth Time Bank Resource Network, and sociocracy is a mechanism by which people can organize in circles. And so if we could get neighborhoods organizing in circles, like for 90 days and then beyond, for good, you know, to keep looking at what more can we do together, I think that would be amazing. So big shout out to Africa and India. They're actually leading the way with these youth circles. They're called Youth Parliament, and they have been really effective. And they've even brought their message to the UN, talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. And they've got a particular brand of sociocracy that they refer to as neighborocracy or youth parliament. So they're solving problems, again, not always environmental, but I love that in Project Drawdown, educating women and girls is actually a climate solution. So if we can get girls and anybody, but especially girls, involved in, education, and this can involve climate, and we do this sociocratically. It's a great way to make sure everybody's voice is heard. We learn to make decisions by consent rather than business as usual. And, bringing in permaculture, time banking, I think it's just a really awesome way that we can share our ideas beyond great events like this, that, they're wonderful, but then they go away and we might lose touch. So anyway, that's my little shout out for Sociocracy. And if you want to learn, a free experience of Sociocracy, you can go to governancealive.org/free webinar. And I didn't put that in my notes yet, but I'll add that. But that's a great way. I think organizing ourselves and learning how to make decisions, again, doesn't seem like a climate solution, but if we can get really organized in that way, it can unleash us and help us organize, and we can just keep doing it more and more. All right, I'll get off my soapbox now. Thanks for letting me talk.
Yeah, I like how you wrap Sociocracy in with the education. I think that's brilliant. And I don't know, Anak, do you have something you want to add in on that?
Yes, I just well, I may not really direct. I think I missed a bit up there. I dropped out for a bit, but yeah, I just love the fact that I wanted to speak to what Kathy was talking about with her composting and all those gardening activities that you mentioned. I strongly believe that really moving on with the climate crisis, the more we act, the better. And I think it's those seemingly small interventions that we do at an individual level that will take us really, really far ahead in our climate actions. So merging the ideas of putting youth together, but more so allowing them to gain skills that will help them begin to act. Things like the challenge, of course, like she has said, putting girls together. And you're talking about foods and all that. One of the things that just reminded me is the idea that in our interventions, what we do with the schools is they have, in Zambia, I do not know how it is with yourselves, schools have production units, okay? These are places where young people get to learn about agriculture. But for many years in the past, it's been about just produce for the school. The climate aspect hasn't really been there. And so one initiative we're doing is something we're calling Smart Climate Action Zambia. And we are trying to tell them to say, this is the theory around climate change, climate change and agriculture. But how does this look like in terms of practicing smart climate agriculture in the backyard of your school, So you're transitioning them from the theory into the practice. And I think the more we get our hands onto something, the better for all of us. I thought I should just mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much power in the practical application. You can know something in and out, and until you do it, you might never actually understand it. And I think that's what's so beautiful about your organization, is that you give individuals the hands-on experience that they need. And I actually met a couple of people after speaking with you when I was out in Zambia, who had gone through that program, and they all spoke so well about it. Everybody was so, like, they loved it. Anybody who I talked to who went through it, which is awesome. And I mean, we do have schools like this around in America, but the focus on climate action and activism is huge. I guess this is like different for different demographics, but I wasn't really raised with like making my voice heard. Like I didn't know that was something that I was supposed to or allowed to be doing. And I think that goes back to Kathy's comment about educating women or girls, because it is like, but empowering any child, doesn't matter what sex they are, like, to know that they have the right to speak up for the world, is huge. there's a documentary called Youth First Gov, and it was really inspiring and emotionally just like, oh, it gave me an emotional push. But it's about 21 children, 11 through 19, who are suing the US government for negligence on our health due to like environmental impact that the government is just letting happen. And it's like, and when I was 11 years old, we were like playing hide and seek and like doing like kid things, you know, and now we have kids who are like trying to fight the climate crisis. And I think equipping them with the right knowledge and tools is crucial. They're our future. So I love the work that you're doing so much. All right. How's everybody feeling? This was cool. So yeah, we might, I'm gonna read this comment. Women and children face the brunt when it comes to food insecurity. The need to meet daily nutrition requirements has become a challenge, especially for pregnant women and breastfeeding mothers, with the rising negative impact and effect of climate change in Africa, food security remaining an urgent need. That's, oh, that gave me goosebumps all over. It's a huge issue. It's a huge issue. And it's unfortunate because we have different areas of the world who look at things so differently. Like America, things need to look nice or we don't want it. And then other people are literally just fighting for enough food. And that's really like why I feel this platform is so beautiful, because it gets us together, and with the collaborative mindset and the resources from different areas, we can make change. That literally hurts my heart to even think about like the food insecurity issues that we have, because there's sorry, it's just not it fires me up. It's not right. It makes me upset, and that's what we're here for. That's why we're working to find the solutions, implement the solutions. That's Green Team Academy has a proven way to launch eco initiatives. So if you are actually ready to commit to creating an impact, please join us for the 2022 International Climate Action Challenge. It's 90-day, pretty intensive like accelerator program. We take you through all of the things you need to build structure. And I think Kathy actually kind of mentioned this a little bit, where the structure of this challenge is meant to kind of keep it so that your project keeps momentum, right? So we help you build a structure, create momentum, so that after the course is done, your project, your team still go, and your voice is still being heard. And we would thank you. Second that, thank you. I truly look forward to seeing everybody there and taking part in this challenge. Any final words from the panelists? Don't all go at once.
Thank you for hosting this. This is just really great to be part of a global community of people who are thought leaders and, you know, willing to step up and share what they're doing in such a thoughtful way. I can't wait to be part of this challenge with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Kathy.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Jane, for spotting us out, and we're glad. I was personally excited to spotlight the young people, the youth we work with. I think that's important. If they do not know that they're doing a great job, I think those of them that were part of this, I believe they get even more motivation to continue on. But to be part of this session, to learn from what's going on around the world, the challenge you're running, what Kathy is doing, and many other that have spoken before us. It's a pleasure, and I look forward to more of this. Yeah, so we can interact and say, where do we start from now that we learned a few things in the past? Yeah, thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined in. Yeah.
Thank you, Anak. That's it, right? Like, now that we have the knowledge, what do we do with it? That's the next step, right? Salia?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone. Thanks to all of our speakers from last previous days, for big thanks to our the participants, and thank you Green Teen Academy, thank you Jen, thank you everyone for arranging this session on a global level, because we have people from different parts of the world. We have panelists from different parts of the world, which actually depict that we are celebrating the Earth Day. So it's really interesting, informative, and inspiring session for everyone. I hope that many of the people who actually want to do something, who actually want to serve the world or serve the earth, they should step ahead and participate in the activities. Like Green Teen Academy has so many initiatives coming up with, and we for the climate neutrality we also have applications open for 2022. So please step ahead. Don't be shy, and please step ahead. Your innovation, your mindset, your ideas could bring up more or a big change in the world, and we must work hard to serve the world to make it a better place for living. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and joining us today. I dropped the Zoom link in. We're going to have a little half-hour happy hour. So if panelists, if you'd like to join, you're more than welcome to. Not necessary if you have other engagements, though. Hope to see some of you guys there, and we'll get some more awesome conversation going. All right. Thank you guys so much, and have a great rest of your day or night.